Welcome to Jazz Piano Skills. I'm Dr. Bob Lawrence. It's time to discover, learn, and play jazz piano. Here we are, the second week of the month, which means we're going to tackle a melodic analysis today. Last week we took our tune of the month, the gorgeous standard I've grown accustomed to her face, and we did our traditional harmonic analysis, examining the form, traditional changes, the harmonic function, common harmonic movement, and of course, voicings. Left-handed voicings, shell voicings, plus the two-handed structures. And as you all know, we always follow up our harmonic analysis with a melodic exploration to discover, learn, and play lyrics, melody, fingerings, phrases, and of course, various standard treatments, jazz treatments like the ballad, bossa, swing. And as we do every week, we have a rhythmic challenge to confront us today as well. How fun is that? Every month, harmony, melody, improvisation, rhythm. Every month. 4 jazz skills categories, or camps, as I like to say, that every aspiring jazz musician, not just pianist, but every aspiring jazz musician must address both conceptually and physically through well thought out and constructed practice strategies or agendas. As I said last week, people don't plan to fail, they just fail to plan. Now, this age-old adage, it rings ever so true when it comes to the study and practicing of jazz. The study of jazz, as I imagine it is with many disciplines, has become saturated with information. Jazz tips abound in articles, books, the internet, social media, website, and yes, podcasts. Heck, it was information overload in the 70s when I began my jazz journey, and it has done nothing but exploded with all of the various ways we connect today. But you know what hasn't changed? What hasn't changed, regardless of when you started your jazz journey, whether you started your study of jazz in the 70s like me or beginning in the year 2025, what hasn't changed is having access to information, good or bad, is not the same as having a coherent strategic plan that is formed from a clear and concise understanding of what jazz is the study of. A plan, right? A plan that can be successfully implemented to ensure consistent musical growth. How nice is that, right? Having a plan that can be successfully implemented to ensure consistent musical growth. Wow. That's important stuff. For you, for me, to consistently enhance our ability to play jazz, it's vitally important. In order to do that, it's vitally important that we formulate and implement a practice plan that is derived from a factual, conceptual understanding of what jazz is the study of. In other words, what are the essential jazz piano skills and how should I study and practice them? That is the question, right, that we all need to ask. What are the essential jazz piano skills and how should I study and practice them? This is precisely what this podcast is all about. It is about answering that question every week. Hence the name, Jazz Piano Skills. I have been pounding since the start of the year what I call the 7 facts of music. And why? Why do I keep talking about the 7 facts of music? Because the 7 facts of music answers the question, what is jazz the study of? The 7 facts of music actually illuminate what the essential jazz piano skills are and how we should study and practice them. So what are the 7 facts of music? Number 1, music is the production of sound and silence. Sound, of course, being major, dominant, minor, half diminished, and diminished. Number 2, sound is produced harmonically and melodically. Harmonically and melodically. Number 3, when sound is produced harmonically, we're playing chords, right? Voicings. Number 4, when sound is produced melodically, we are playing scales and arpeggios, right? Every melody is made up of scales and arpeggios. Number 5, when playing scales and arpeggios, melodies, we are moving in one of 2 directions, up or down. And number 6, we camouflage or we decorate our scales and arpeggios with tension, chromaticism, right? Notes that are outside the key center. And finally, number 7, we make musical facts 1 through 6 interesting by adding rhythm. That's it. Those are the 7 facts of music. And it is imperative that you think about these 7 facts a lot, to the point that you actually see and hear, of course, see and hear music in accordance with these 7 facts. Once this tipping point happens for you, when you can identify everything you encounter musically as being framed by the 7 facts that I just outlined, then you can begin constructing, finally, right? You can begin constructing a practice plan that actually produces the results that you're looking for. Now, on the other hand, if you approach learning how to play jazz as the process of assimilating a bunch of autonomous musical concepts, ideas, licks, progressions, theories that you've heard about, now you practice them in hopes that they somehow eventually, and magically, of course, that somehow they all come together to begin making you sound like Oscar Peterson or Bill Evans, or maybe Red Garland and Keith Jarrett, or maybe Chick Corea and Herbie Hancock, right? Doesn't matter. You're going to magically sound like a professional jazz pianist by practicing these autonomous musical concepts. If that's how you approach it, then all I can say to you is, well, good luck. Just know that the odds are overwhelmingly stacked against you. But you know what? There is a silver lining. You can take comfort in knowing that you're not alone. Right? The majority of people with aspirations of developing accomplished jazz skills are actually in that boat. They're in the same boat with you, right? Wow. Again, this is why I launched Jazz Piano Skills 6 years ago, to help everyone swimming in the stagnant pool of autonomous musical concepts, ideas, licks, progressions, theories, an entirely new approach, right? I wanted to offer an entirely new approach to studying and practicing essential jazz piano skills, an approach anchored by the 7 facts of music. And, this is precisely why we approach our tune study every week, every month, every year, centered around the 7 facts of music, using 3 distinct phases, right? Phase 1, always a harmonic analysis. Phase 2, a melodic analysis. And phase 3, improvisation development. And we add emphasis to each of these phases with a very specific focus on fact number 7. And what was fact number 7? Rhythm, right? We add interest to facts 1 through 6 with rhythm. The harmonic rhythm challenge, week 1, always involves some kind of rhythmic transcribing and comping skills. The melodic rhythm challenge, week 2, always involves some kind of transposition of a melodic motif to various key centers. And the improvisation rhythm challenge, which we'll do next week, stretches arpeggio and scale motion through various segments of the sound, right? Thus, really truly transforming our jazz soloing or jazz improvisation vocabulary. Needless to say, I'm thrilled because we have officially established an amazing, educationally sound, 3-tier, 3-phase approach that is formulated from a clear understanding of the 7 facts of music. The 7 facts needed to illuminate essential jazz piano skills needed to successfully discover, learn, and play tunes, to successfully discover, learn, and play jazz piano. So, all this to say that today we are doing a melodic analysis that you are going to melodically discover I've grown accustomed to her face. And you're going to learn melody by ear, of course. You're going to learn the phrases and the various target notes of I've grown accustomed to her face. And you're going to play I've grown accustomed to her face using 3 standard jazz treatments. And on top of all that, you will be given a rhythm challenge to develop your transposing skills, your ability to move a rhythmic, melodic idea around to various key centers. So, as I always like to say, regardless of where you are in your jazz journey, a beginner, an intermediate player, an advanced player, or even if you consider yourself a seasoned and experienced professional, you're going to find this Jazz Piano Skills podcast lesson exploring I've grown accustomed to her face, a melodic analysis, to be very beneficial. But you know what? Before we get started, before we dig in, I want to, as I always do, welcome first-time listeners to Jazz Piano Skills. And if you are new to Jazz Piano Skills, if you're a new Jazz Piano Skills podcast listener, welcome. I want to invite you to become a Jazz Piano Skills member. Membership at Jazz Piano Skills helps keep this podcast episode ad-free, which I'm very proud of. So your membership, in addition to helping us keep Jazz Piano Skills ad-free, grants you many, many perks. Number 1, as a member, you have access to the premium podcast content, which basically means you get to hear the entire podcast. The first half of every podcast episode is free for everyone to enjoy. We deal a lot with educational content in the beginning that I just discussed. We have the question of the week. We lay out the educational agenda and the lesson rationale. The second half, for members only, we get into the lesson content, the various demonstrations, and weekly assignments. As a member, you also have access to the weekly podcast packets. Podcast packets are the illustrations, the lead sheets, the play-alongs that are designed and developed each and every week for each and every weekly podcast episode. These are educational materials that you need to have in your hands when listening to the podcast to get the most out of it, and of course to have sitting on the piano when practicing as well. As a Jazz Piano Skills member, you have access to the online courses. These are comprehensive, interactive, self-paced, and sequential courses. All of them are packed with interactive learning media, plus video demonstrations of the Jazz Piano Skills in all 12 keys. You also, as a Jazz Piano Skills member, have a reserved seat in the weekly master classes, which are held every Thursday evening, 8 p.m. Central Standard Time. And if you can't make the class, it's no big deal. The master classes are recorded, and you can watch the video or listen to the audio whenever you wish, whenever convenient, and as often as you would like. As a Jazz Piano Skills member, you also have access to the private online Jazz Piano Skills community, which is growing weekly. The community hosts a variety of episode-specific forums, as well as just general jazz forums, and lots of great member feedback and assistance is available through the community as well. And finally, as a Jazz Piano Skills member, you have unlimited educational support. Right? Private, personal, professional support whenever and as often as you need it. There are many ways to get in touch with me throughout the week. SpeakPipe, which is a nice widget that is on every page in the website that allows you to send me an audio clip, and I can respond with an audio clip right back to you. There's a web form, and of course, my office number here at the Dallas School of Music. You can reach out to me anytime through that number and my extension. And if you're old school, you can use email, right? So anyway, all of these amazing privileges are waiting to help you discover, learn, and play jazz piano. So check it out. Check them all out at jazzpianoskills.com. And of course, become a member to enjoy all the fabulous perks that I've just outlined for you. If you get to the website, you're poking around, you have some questions, no big deal. I'm happy to help you. So please connect with me, contact me. Happy to answer any questions that you may have and help you in any way that I can. All righty. So speaking of questions, the question of the week. This question comes from Alexander Bessing, living in Mannheim, Germany. And Alexander, he asked this question. I'm just listening to your podcast episode, The Jazz Language, and I love the structured teaching. Very concise, very clear. And you always talk about the 5 primary sounds of music: major, dominant, minor, half diminished, and diminished. I was wondering about the suspended sound. It doesn't belong to either minor, major, dominant sound directly. Is the suspension not a primary sound of music too? Thank you very much and have a great day. See you. Bye. Okay, well, Alexander, great question. I've gotten to know Alexander well over the last couple weeks, relatively new to jazz piano skills, always has great questions. And this is a perfect example. It's a fantastic question, and I love that you are exercising, Alexander, critical thinking skills, because this is exactly how you grow conceptually, which of course is going to radically change how you grow physically. The conceptual understanding drives the physical development. So let's deal with your question. Let's deal with the suspension and some other harmonic enhancements commonly used by jazz musicians. So we have the suspension, but there are enhancements like the augmented. We have flat 9, we have sharp 9s and flat 5s and sharp 5s, sharp 11s, flat 13. We see all this fancy schmancy stuff. Sus chords, augmented chords, altered chords like the flat 9, sharp 9, and so on, right? These are all awesome enhancements used by musicians to decorate a primary sound. See, this is so important. I'm going to say that again. Suspensions, augmented, flat 9, sharp 9, flat 5, sharp 11, flat 13. These are all enhancements used by musicians to decorate the primary sounds of major, minor, dominant, half diminished, and diminished. So let's take a few minutes and think this through. Let's think this through. Let's start with the suspension. A suspension occurs when the third of the harmony is replaced with the fourth of the harmony. So a C major sus replaces the note E, the third, with the note F, which of course is the fourth. And likewise, a C dominant sus replaces the third, the note E, with the fourth, the note F. Pretty straightforward stuff, but if your focus is on the enhancement, if your focus is on the sus, you might easily overlook the fact that you did not change the primary sound. In other words, a C major sus is still a major sound, and a dominant sus is still a dominant sound. So decorating a sound does not change the sound or create a new sound. A major sus is still a major sound, and a dominant sus is still a dominant sound. The same thought process applies to the augmented enhancement. A C major sharp 5, C major augmented, is still a major sound. And dominant chords that are altered with a flat 9 or a sharp 9 or a sharp 11 or flat or sharp 5s or flat 13, they're still dominant chords. They're still dominant sounds. Here's an analogy that I always love to give to drive this point home. Alexander, if you and I went out for dinner this evening and you ordered fried chicken and I ordered barbecue chicken, we would both be eating chicken. Just because the chicken is prepared differently, just because the chicken is enhanced differently, does not change the fact that we are both eating chicken. Likewise, just because one dominant chord is decorated with a flat 9 and another dominant chord is decorated with a flat 13, doesn't change the fact that they are both dominant sounds. Likewise, a major sus is still major, and a dominant sus is still dominant. You see, Alexander, it is so important that how we think about music, it must continually become simpler and simpler if we hope to get better and better. If our thinking is becoming more complicated, then it's a clear sign we're heading in the wrong direction. I have said this before in previous episodes, that the difference between amateur and professional musicians is that amateur musicians are always complicating their playing, and professional musicians are always searching for ways to simplify their playing. Right? Simplify your playing through simplifying your thinking. We have 5 primary sounds of music: major, dominant, minor, half diminished, and diminished. Everything else is decorating or enhancing those sounds, not changing them into new sounds. So when you hear me continually refer to the 5 primary sounds of music, major, dominant, minor, half diminished, and diminished, it's the most succinct way to think about. It's the most succinct way to teach, discuss, or study and practice sound. Once we have a functional command of the 5 primary sounds of music, we can begin exploring the various ways that jazz musicians enhance or decorate these sounds. Right? Approaching sound in this manner, again, simplifies your thought process, and as a result, your playing. And that's what we want to do, right? Now you're starting to think and play like a professional jazz musician when you simplify your thought process, and as a result, improve your playing. I hope this helps, Alexander. It's a great question, as always. But if more clarification is needed, or you want to dive a little deeper into this subject, I'm happy to do so. So do not hesitate to reach out to me. I'm always happy to help, spend time with you, and kick the can around a little bit more if need be. All right, so let's discover, learn, and play jazz piano. Let's discover, learn, and play I've Grown Accustomed to Her Face, a melodic analysis. All right, so when learning any tune, I approach it the same way. And again, genre makes no difference. Makes no difference whether it's a rock tune, an R&B, country, folk, pop, jazz, you name it, makes no difference. Here's how I go about it. Number 1, I listen, always listening. Various artists, vocalist, instrumentalist, pianist, and artists from various genres of music as well, not just jazz musicians. And number 2, I always dive in harmonically first. I always do a harmonic analysis like we did last week, right? We looked at form, changes, function, common movement, voicings. That's number 2. Number 3, I do a melodic analysis like we're going to do today, right? Learn the melody, always transcribe the melody. I look at phrases, and I always explore various treatments of the tune as well. And then finally, I like to explore a tune that I'm learning improvisationally. So I want to understand chord scale relationships. I want to be have a command of my arpeggio and scale movement through the various sounds within the tune, explore tension. And of course, with all of these, right, harmonic analysis, melodic and improvisation, I explore rhythm as well, right? It's a pretty thorough, pretty complete approach that we go through each and every month in a very structured manner. So this week, right, melodic analysis for I've Grown Accustomed to Her Face. And next week, of course, we'll dive into the improvisation. So the educational agenda for today is as follows. Number one, we're going to listen to definitive recordings of I've Grown Accustomed to Her Face. Number two, we're going to learn the melody of I've Grown Accustomed to Her Face, by ear, of course, transcribing it. Number three, we're going to look at suggested fingerings for playing the melody of I've Grown Accustomed to Her Face. Number four, we will identify the various phrases, melodic phrases within the tune. Number five, we will apply the voicings that we looked at last week with a harmonic analysis. We will apply those voicings to the melody of I've Grown Accustomed to Her Face. And then finally, number six, we'll spend a little time looking at this great standard using three typical jazz treatments: the ballad, the bossa nova, and the swing treatment. So if you are a Jazz Piano Skills member, I want you to take a few minutes right now to download and print the podcast packets. Again, these are the illustrations, the lead sheets, and the play-alongs. And again, your membership grants you access to this material each and every week, right? In addition to the premium content, you get these podcast packets as well. As I mentioned every week, you should have this podcast material, these packets in your hands when listening to the episode, and you certainly are going to want them sitting on the piano when practicing. Okay, so now that you have your podcast packets, I want you to, as we always do, jump in with our lead sheets. So I want you to grab your lead sheets, and you should have 6 lead sheets in your packet. Now, these lead sheets, as you just look at them quickly, you can tell that these lead sheets are going to help us with our transcribing of the melody. They're going to help us with our fingerings, identifying the phrases and target notes, applying the voicings to the melody as well. So we have a ton to get through. We have a ton to dissect today, so we need to get busy. Now, typically at this time, I would always play a single definitive recording of our tune. This year, of course, I have decided to place my listening suggestions in the Jazz Piano Skills community forums. And again, there are a couple reasons for this, right? Number one, I want to be able to suggest more than just one tune, right? More than just one tune to check out. And number two, I want to preserve as much time in the podcast as possible for educational content. Okay, so I want you to right now, before going any further, head on over to the community and check out the listening examples that I think is worth your time to help you gain even a deeper insight into the tune and various ways great jazz artists have treated this tune over the years. Okay, and once you have listened to the recommended recordings, I want you to grab your lead sheets, and of course, we're going to start with lead sheet 1. So let's take a look at lead sheet 1, okay? And you'll see that lead sheet 1, it's kind of what I call a fill-in-the-blank. Thank you for listening to Jazz Piano Skills. The remaining premium content of this episode is available to Jazz Piano Skills members at jazzpianoskillspodcast.com. Visit jazzpianoskills.com to learn more about membership privileges and become a Jazz Piano Skills member. Thank you.